This is a response to Mystical Forest's video, Atheists Are Related to Apes. Hello again, Nick. I'd been under the impression that you'd vowed to stay away from the subject of evolution, and so was rather surprised when I stepped into this particularly unpleasant video on a recent visit to your channel. I see you've been up to your old tricks again. As a result, I felt obliged to respond, but you didn't make it easy since you evidently didn't think it necessary to incorporate a point into your 15-minute rambling and disjointed rant. So I decided that my best course of action was to individually address some of your more egregious cerebral defecations. Now, why don't you save us some time and bend over now while I pull on my gloves, and then we can get started.
Yeah, Darwin did just make it up, because here's the thing. You don't have any proof of evolution. Okay? You have no proof. You have no fossils that suggest that humans and apes have a relation. You have none. None. There's not one. You haven't found one yet. Not one intermediate creature. Not one. Not one intermediate creature from any creature. Nothing. Not one animal. Not one intermediate creature of a bug. Nothing. You have nothing.
Fortunately for progress and humanity, science places no stock in the opinions of ignorant and feeble-minded simpletons. If it did, we might still be curing cancers with leeches and crapping out of windows. Despite your vociferous yet unsupported denials, the fossil record is replete with transitional forms. Not only do these organisms exhibit multiple incremental morphological changes, each building on those inherited from their predecessors, they also happen to appear in the correct chronological order in the stratigraphic column. Countless examples have been pointed out to creationists time and time again, so if you want to credibly discredit them, you need to give specific and rational arguments against each. Denying their existence outright is a debating strategy worthy of a 5-year-old or someone with a mental age of one. All you've given is your personal opinion, and that means jack shit to me or anyone else you might be trying to convince. This behavior makes you look like someone who's either unwilling to examine any evidence that conflicts with the puerile bedtime stories his parents peddled onto him as fact, or is simply too stupid to understand it no matter how many times or how simply it's explained to him.
Okay, DNA. He did not know about DNA, which, you know, if you're a scientist, when they did find out about DNA, you shouldn't believe in evolution at all. It should have totally debunked it. Actually, it does debunk it, but you people still believe it. You still believe apes and humans they have a similar ancestor or some bullshit. When, you know, our DNA is so different. Okay?
It's hard to know where to begin when you hear something as profoundly moronic as this. You haven't been sticking things in your ear again lately, have you, Nick? Firstly, it's a documented fact that chimpanzees share at least 96% of their DNA with humans. Excluding insertions and deletions, the number is closer to 99%. I can only imagine that you got the thought that our DNA is so different from the same place you seem to get all your ideas. Secondly, do you have more than the vaguest idea of what DNA actually is, how it replicates, what it does, and how it relates to evolution? Your YouTube material suggests that you don't, and yet you still feel qualified to decree by fiat that its discovery should force scientists to abandon evolutionary theory. For the record, the advent of molecular biology and the sequencing of over 100 billion base pairs of DNA from thousands of organisms has done nothing but to confirm and strengthen evolutionary theory. From explaining the number of chromosomes in humans and great apes to the remarkable convergence of anatomical and genetic cladograms, from the conservation of endogenous retroviral sequences to the discovery of vestigial genes, DNA sequence information is proof positive of the fact of evolution as beautifully explained by the theory of the same name, and your baseless assertion to the contrary is proof of nothing other than your oafish ineptitude. Finally, Darwin produced his theory despite possessing only a tiny fraction of the data we have today, including no knowledge of DNA and therefore the mechanism of his descent with modification. Every one of the millions of pieces of evidence collected since has held the possibility of destroying his grand idea, and yet has done nothing but confirm, refine, or elaborate on it. The fact that he was able to do so is simply a testament to the genius of the man whose reputation you're attempting to besmirch with your pig-ignorant fuck-wittery.
Okay, you foolish moron. That's not a fact. I don't know where you get this from. Okay? That's not a fact. Okay, you might think it's a fact because you lie through your teeth every day, and, you know, you have to lie. Okay? You have to say, well, this is a fact and this is a fact. But you're not saying, you know, you're not really meaning what we're meaning, okay? A fact to you is something, an hypothesis that you can prove over and over again.
What else would you call something that you could prove over and over again, Nick? I'd be curious to know. Also, have you been sniffing your mom's nail polish again? Even though you neglect to mention what you would consider a fact to be, I'd like to point out that the validity of any branch of science is not brought into question just because a random imbecile baselessly asserts what is factual and what is not. Also, I found it interesting that you said,
I don't know where you get this from.
Because you don't really know, do you, Nick? And that's because you've never truly bothered to find out, and yet you're more than happy to arrogantly strut around the internet pretending otherwise while wearing your stupidity like a crown and your ignorance like a badge of honor.
Scientific fact is not the same as, what we say is a fact. What we say is a fact is something that is a proven fact. You cannot prove that apes and humans have relation. You can't prove it. You can't prove that. You can't prove dinosaurs and birds have relation, so it's not a fact in my view. Okay, it's just a bullshit idea. That's what it is. That's all it is.
So what exactly is a proven fact, Nick? Once again, you forgot to tell us. Is it because of your inability to adequately articulate the anemic thoughts that are crawling through the sludge between your ears, or is it because you don't know for yourself? Is it a case of, I'm not sure what a fact is, but I know one when I see one? I'd like to know, because otherwise it's really difficult to respond to this kind of non-argument. So let me make an assumption and suggest that a fact to you is something that you can see, touch, smell or hear, on Fox News perhaps. Something simple and uncomplicated, something that doesn't have to make you think too hard before accepting it. If that's the case, then how would you convict someone of murder, Nick? Would you only do it if you saw it with your own eyes, or on TV? Or maybe if Glenn Beck told you he saw it happen? Would you ignore the DNA evidence, the fingerprints, the blood spatter patterns, the fiber analysis, the phone records, and so on? Because these are the kinds of evidence, the kinds of facts that are used every day to indirectly prove beyond all reasonable doubt the fact that the accused committed the crime despite no one having seen it happen. Similarly, the fact of human evolution has been proved beyond all reasonable doubt by numerous and independent lines of evidence, including the remarkable morphological similarities between ourselves and other primates, our numerous vestigial organs such as the extrinsic ear and erectopili muscles, the appendix, coccyx, wisdom teeth, and many more, the fossil record and its entirely consistent temporal and geographic distribution, and of course the absolutely conclusive and undeniable genetic data. I can only imagine that you refuse to acknowledge any of this evidence because either your profound stupidity renders you incapable of understanding it, or because you refuse to examine it honestly because you prefer to live in a world explained by infantile fables and magic rather than one illuminated by science.
Okay, you have ideas and you call them facts. You call a fact because you found one little tiny there's a similarity there, that's a fact. They're related, that's it. They're related because there's one similarity that makes them related.
You're thinking that evolutionary links are made using only one similarity is yet another example of the magnitude of your gargantuan ignorance. For example, we've known for over a century that whales evolved from land animals and more recently specifically from early ungulates. Numerous fossils directly demonstrate this progression using multiple morphological changes including the shape of the head, the gradual conversion of forelimbs to flippers, the development of structures of the ear, the loss of rear limbs and pelvis, and the migration of the nostrils. Additionally, the geochemical, geographical, chronological, and embryological evidence also all points to the same conclusion. Hardly just one similarity, eh, Nick? And to cap it all, after all this was discovered, the DNA evidence you claim debunks evolution has finally confirmed that whales' closest living relatives are, guess what, ungulates. Your misrepresentation of the evidence for evolution, Nick, reflects either your profound dishonesty or the utter lack of anything resembling a thought process rattling around inside your empty skull.
Just because there's similarities doesn't mean they're related. A butterfly has scales, okay? Just like a Komodo dragon, or fish, or snakes. Doesn't mean they're all related.
Whoops, bad example, Nick, because scales are a wonderful example of evolution. The scales of butterflies are made from a carbohydrate-based polymer called chitin, while those of fish contain amongst other components the protein collagen. This reflects the evolutionary line of insects from arthropods which themselves diverged from their common ancestor with chordates long before any kind of scale evolved. Reptilian scales, on the other hand, are composed of both collagen and keratin, which are also major components of their evolutionary descendants' hair and feathers. All of this is beautifully explained by evolutionary theory, and your stock answer that your God did it for his own inscrutable reasons explains nothing, but at least it saves you the inconvenience of having to actually think about anything, something that is perfectly demonstrated in this next clip.
Smallest single-cell organism has natural selection within the DNA. Now, if there is a smaller organism that did not have natural selection, and then this organism did, or, whatever, how many intermediate creatures, which there's none, then you could say that's an evolutionary process. But the fact is, every creature has natural selection. There's no evidence to show that natural selection was an evolutionary process. It's just something that all creatures have. It's not something new. It's not something that the first creature did not have. All creatures have it.
Congratulations, Nick, because that's probably the most moronic thing I've ever heard a creationist say on YouTube. I suggest that you pull your head out of your ass for a minute and look up the actual meaning of the phrase natural selection, because it's obvious that you have no idea what it actually means. To give an analogy in terms of something you might be able to understand, you would have made as much sense if you declared that you hated football because the baskets are too high for you to reach second base and score a goal in one with. All you just did was confirm the sheer magnitude of your learning disability.
The reason why the scientific community is evolutionists, they all believe in evolution, is because if they don't believe in evolution, they get kicked out. Okay, they're doing what they have to do to have a job. That's why. Okay, anyone that says that evolution they don't agree with it, they get kicked out.
Considering that I'm willing to bet my left nut that the only time you've set foot in a university is to watch a football game or clean the toilets, it's hard to take this claim any more seriously than your deranged ranting on natural selection. Kindly either supply the names of any academics who are fired for opposing evolutionary theory rather than for poor publication records, gross incompetence, or academic dishonesty, or just shut the fuck up.
Because if there's not evolution, there's creation, okay? And, that's just the way it is. If there's not evolution, then there's creation.
False dichotomies now, is it, Nick? Because creation doesn't just mean your particular fable, does it? How about the Hindu creation tale? Or the Norse? How about the numerous Native American myths or the Aboriginal Dreamtime? Please supply convincing and supportable evidence to explain why your particular flight of fancy trumps these and countless others, because I very much doubt that you can. In effect, what you should have said is, if it's not evolution and it's pesky empirical and verifiable evidence, then it's some story evidently made up by uneducated and ignorant savages in a more primitive time. I know which I'm betting on.
If there is a heaven and hell, who's the smarter one here? Because if there isn't, then, hey, nothing's going to happen to me. It doesn't matter. Nothing's going to happen to you. But if there is a heaven and hell, something's going to happen to you. And it's not going to be good. And who's going to be the more intelligent one here? Yeah, I am. Not you. So either way, I win.
And we finish up with a crude and clumsily worded version of Pascal's wager. Is that really the best you can do, Nick? Because what makes you so sure that if there is a God, you've picked the right one? There's more than one choice, or haven't you noticed? Even in your own religion. So which door do you think you're going through if it turns out the Muslims happen to be right? After all, they're just as fervent in their beliefs and have equally as much evidence to support them as you do, don't they? And what about the Hindus, Nick? Maybe you'll come back as a dung beetle, or a syphilis bacterium. That'd be a step up. On the whole, I think I'll just stick to being nice to people and doing the best I can to make the world a better place. If there is no God, at least some people might remember me fondly for my acts and not my beliefs. And if there is, maybe I'll still be able to grab myself a virgin or two, or come back as Hugh Hefner. And on the possibility that old Yahweh happens to not actually be a fantasy concocted by long-dead desert savages, then I'll guess I'll be seeing you downstairs, Nick, because from all the bile and hate I've seen you spew in your videos, you're as much of a Christian as I am a beauty queen. Unless, of course, the bearded one doesn't care about your behavior and lets you in simply because you're dumb enough to believe in him without any evidence at all, in which case you can keep your heaven, because I'd rather not spend eternity in the company of cold-hearted, mean-spirited little bigots like you. Well, I suppose we're all done, Nick, so you can stand up and pull up your pants now. Hopefully I've put your ideas back where they belong, and this time they'll stay there. In the future, you really should stick to politics, you know. It may not stop you looking like an asshole, but at least I won't have to spend my time tearing you a new one.